Did you know that in the Middle Ages, animals could actually be put on trial in court just like humans? Pigs, rats, and even insects were sometimes accused of crimes and judged by real courts. If you enjoy strange and unbelievable facts from history, make sure to like this video and subscribe, because the past is far more bizarre than we imagine. And now, we're off. One of the strangest things about medieval life is that animals were sometimes treated as if they were responsible members of society. If a pig injured someone or destroyed property, it could actually be arrested and taken to court. There are real historical records describing trials where pigs stood in front of judges while witnesses testified about what had happened. In one famous case in France in 1386, a pig was accused of killing a child. The court organized a full legal proceeding, and after hearing the evidence, the pig was found guilty. The animal was even dressed in human clothes before the public execution, which was meant to demonstrate that justice applied to all creatures in the community. It may sound ridiculous today, but for people at that time, the world was governed by strict religious logic. They believed that everything existed within God's order, and if something disturbed that order, it had to be punished. This strange belief system influenced many parts of medieval life, including the way people tried to understand sickness and disease. Medical knowledge during the Middle Ages was very different from modern science. Doctors believed the human body was controlled by 4 basic fluids called humors: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. According to this theory, illness occurred when these fluids became unbalanced. To fix the problem, doctors used treatments that might seem shocking today. One of the most common practices was bloodletting. A physician would cut a vein or attach leeches to the patient in order to drain blood from the body. They believed removing blood could cure fever, headaches, infections, and many other illnesses. Sometimes patients actually felt temporary relief, but often the treatment weakened them even more. Despite this, bloodletting remained popular for centuries because medical ideas were based on ancient writings rather than experiments. These methods were especially frightening during times of epidemic disease, when entire populations were searching desperately for a cure. In the middle of the 14th century, Europe faced one of the most devastating disasters in human history: the Black Death. This deadly plague spread rapidly through trade routes and crowded cities, killing millions of people in only a few years. Historians estimate that nearly 1/3 of Europe's population died during the outbreak. Entire villages disappeared, and in many places there were not enough healthy people left to bury the dead. Fear spread everywhere because no one understood what caused the disease. Some believed it was punishment from God, others thought it came from poisonous air, and some blamed strange planetary alignments. Doctors tried to protect themselves by wearing long coats and eerie masks with large beak-shaped noses. Inside the beaks, they placed herbs, flowers, or spices that were supposed to filter the bad air. These plague doctor masks became one of the most recognizable images of medieval history. Yet, despite the fear and death spreading through cities, life continued inside castles where nobles lived very different lives from ordinary villagers. Castles often look romantic in movies, but the reality of living in a medieval castle was far less comfortable than most people imagine. Many castles were cold, damp, and filled with smoke from large fireplaces. Early castles did not always have proper chimneys, so smoke slowly drifted through the rooms before escaping through small openings in the roof. Windows were tiny because large openings would weaken the walls, which meant many rooms were dark even during the day. Floors were sometimes covered with straw mixed with herbs that helped hide unpleasant smells. Hygiene standards were also very different from modern expectations. People bathed much less frequently, and waste disposal systems were extremely basic. Despite these uncomfortable conditions, castles were also centers of political power and celebration. Nobles hosted huge feasts where guests gathered to eat, drink, and watch entertainment that could last for many hours. Medieval feasts were lively events that followed customs very different from modern dining. Forks were not widely used in Europe until much later, so most people ate with their hands or with knives that they carried themselves. Large pieces of meat were placed on the table, and guests cut portions for themselves. Instead of plates, thick slices of stale bread called trenchers were often used to hold food. The bread absorbed sauces and juices during the meal, and afterward it was sometimes given to the poor. Drinking cups were often shared between several people, which would seem unusual today. Feasts also included musicians, storytellers, and performers who entertained the guests between courses. While nobles enjoyed these extravagant gatherings, most ordinary people lived very different lives outside the castle walls. For the majority of medieval people, daily life revolved around farming. Villagers spent most of their time working in fields, growing crops like wheat, barley, and rye. Their homes were simple wooden houses with dirt floors and small fireplaces used for cooking. Families often shared the house with animals during cold weather because the animals' body heat helped keep the space warmer. Life was physically demanding, and many people worked from sunrise until sunset, depending on the season. However, village life was not only about hard labor. Communities celebrated seasonal festivals, weddings, and religious holidays that brought people together for music, dancing, and storytelling. One of the most exciting moments for many villages was the arrival of traveling entertainers. Traveling performers moved from town to town, bringing music, acrobatics, jokes, and dramatic stories. These entertainers were some of the main sources of news and information because they carried stories from distant regions. They told tales about heroic knights, dangerous monsters, magical lands, and legendary battles. Their performances helped shape many of the myths and legends that people believed during the Middle Ages. Among the most famous heroes in these stories were knights, warriors who were expected to follow a code of honor known as chivalry. But the real life of a knight was much harsher than the romantic legend suggested. Becoming a knight required many years of training. Young boys from noble families often began their preparation around the age of 7, when they became pages serving in another noble household. Later, they became squires who assisted experienced knights in battle and daily duties. Only after years of training could they finally be knighted in a formal ceremony. Knights wore heavy armor made of metal plates that could weigh more than 20 kilograms. Despite the weight, skilled knights learned to move quickly and fight effectively. They participated in wars, protected castles, and competed in tournaments that attracted huge crowds of spectators. These tournaments were among the most exciting public events in medieval Europe. One of the most famous tournament competitions was jousting. In this event, 2 knights rode toward each other on horseback while holding long wooden lances. The goal was to strike the opponent's shield or armor with enough force to break the lance or knock the rival off the horse. Although the lances were designed to shatter on impact, the collisions were still extremely dangerous. Broken bones and serious injuries were common, and sometimes competitors were even killed. Nevertheless, tournaments remained incredibly popular because they combined sport, spectacle, and social prestige. Victorious knights gained fame, prizes, and admiration from the crowd. Yet, while tournaments entertained people across Europe, another powerful force shaped medieval society even more strongly. Religion influenced almost every aspect of medieval life. Churches stood at the center of towns and villages, and people believed their actions on earth would determine their fate after death. Because of this belief, pilgrimages became extremely popular. Pilgrims traveled long distances to visit holy sites, hoping to receive forgiveness for sins or blessings for their families. Some journeys lasted weeks or even months, and travelers walked across entire countries carrying simple belongings. Along the roads that connected these pilgrimage routes, inns, markets, and small towns developed to serve the travelers. These networks slowly helped connect different regions of Europe. As merchants, pilgrims, and travelers moved between cities and kingdoms, they carried ideas, stories, and inventions with them. Over time, this exchange of knowledge began to transform society. Universities appeared in growing cities where scholars studied philosophy, science, and medicine. Books became more common, and learning slowly expanded beyond monasteries and churches. These gradual changes helped prepare Europe for the end of the medieval period and the beginning of a new era of discovery and innovation. The Middle Ages were not just a time of castles and knights. They were filled with strange beliefs, surprising traditions, and unforgettable stories that shaped the world we know today. From bizarre animal trials and unusual medical practices to massive tournaments and long pilgrimages, medieval life was far more complex and fascinating than many people imagine. If you enjoyed these stories, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and stay for more unbelievable facts from history, because the past still hides thousands of incredible stories waiting to be discovered.